hold from now. So please give
Awesome.
us some presentation. Thank you.
Okay. So thank you very much first, Yuko and Yushi and Yuko, to invite me to this. The So I guess the first part of the presentation would be that I want to kind of show you an overview of what pyRevit is. A lot of you have already used pyRevit, or sort of like started using it just now. I want to give you an overview of what pyRevit really is behind the scenes and how does it work and stuff. And then we'll talk about a couple of really powerful tools that people like. And then I'll show you how you can create your own tools using pyRevit on Revit and sort of like dig into the Revit API and stuff. If you want to know anything about pyRevit, go to your browser to wiki.pyrevitlabs.io, and it will take you and redirect you to the Notion page, homepage for pyRevit. In this page, you'll find a couple of different sections that are kind of important. You have a button to access the source code for the project. So if you want to eventually contribute to the project, that's a good place to start. I'm going to put this on the side so it's not too wide. And then there's another button here that we just started. It's called the pyRevit Forums. So if you want to join the discourse group for pyRevit, you can actually join the community. And people have started recently joining. We started this about a week ago, so it's fairly, very, very new. If you want to join here, ask questions. There's going to be a whole lot of people answering and helping out each other. And then so after this part, you'll see that there's a getting started with using pyRevit on how to use the tools, and it has a couple of examples there. And getting started developing for pyRevit. This is sort of the section that if you want to create your own extensions, your own tools, and all that kind of stuff, this is the part that's really important to get through and kind of know the internals of pyRevit and how it works and how you can utilize these functions and features to create your own extensions. And then a couple of links for like staying updated and reporting the bug issues and getting involved with the project and stuff. Arguably, one of the most important piece of this this wiki is this developer docs. So when you start getting into pyRevit development and creating Python tools and stuff like that for Revit, this is a really good section to come to. There's a really good YouTube, sort of like a starter class that teaches the basics of using Python to communicate with Revit and basically creating your own tools and being able to make changes and read data from Revit. And there's a couple of references here that talks about each one of the pyRevit features in detail, like how do pyRevit bundles work, or the pyRevit CLI, which is the command line utility that comes with pyRevit, or the telemetry system, and like different features that pyRevit has. Under the script section, you'll see a lot of like really good articles that show you how you can use the pyRevit features to sort of like create better reports in your tool and all that kind of stuff. I'll show you, I'll basically come back to this at the end of this conversation when we talk about how you can create extensions for pyRevit. But this is going to be the home page for pyRevit. So anything that you need, you should be able to run a search in here and find it pretty easily. Like if I want to know anything about the telemetry system, you can run a search really quickly and it gives you all the pages and stuff, and it can take me to directly to that telemetry page on the developer docs that we talked about. So it's got a pretty good search system. And if you join Notion and create an account, you can actually comment, you can actually select and comment any of these sections and leave some notes and stuff for me. If you see any errors, any improvements in that text and stuff, just let me know. So two of the most important resources, the pyRevit forums, make sure you join. It's a pretty good place. And the pyRevit source code if you want to contribute to the source code. Now, when you want to install pyRevit, go to the pyRevit source code here and go on the releases tab on the side. And you can actually see that it says like pyRevit 4.8 beta 5, and this is the latest version of pyRevit that's in development. It's pretty stable. It's still called beta because I'm adding a couple of things to it to basically before the full release, but it's pretty stable. And I just published this 2 hours ago. So you can download the installer right from here, from the assets, and you would install it on your machine. It installs just like any other application. I'm hoping that you won't see any installation issues and stuff like that. But basically, once you launch your Revit, and I'm going to close because we have time here. I don't have to go too fast, so I'm going to close my Revit and launch it again. And you would see that as Revit launches, it actually loads pyRevit with it as a just a standard add-on to Revit. And the way you know this is that pyRevit has this thing that's called the output window. It's a window that pyRevit uses to report all the information that it wants to report to the user. It's actually a sort of like a simplified web browser. So the output is in HTML. Any of you that want to get into more like advanced outputs, you can actually output charts and tables and graphics and all that kind of stuff to this output window. So it's pretty powerful, powerful feature of pyRevit. This is the output window that I was talking about. It has a couple of things that I wanted to let you know, just in case you see any errors and stuff and you want to report that. So this is what pyRevit does when you launch Revit first. It sort of like gives you a report of what happened, what version of pyRevit you're running, what version of Revit you're running right here, the R and Python engine that's running on, and sort of like a couple of these information, and then the extension that it loads. And it gives you, at the end of it, it gives you a load time. On your machine, I'm running Windows in a virtual machine, so it's quite slower than a normal bare metal hardware. So on your machine, this should load a lot faster than this. If you don't want to see this window, I'll show you how you can disable it next. But a couple of things about this window. There's a couple of buttons on top of it that help you save this information and print this information and stuff. Or you can click on this keep on top and the window stays on top. So if you click somewhere else in the window, it doesn't go away. Or you can switch it to a sort of like a collapse mode. And if you click somewhere else, it collapses, but it stays on top that way. So if you kind of want the outputs, but you don't want it to go away, you can toggle these right here. It gives you your user machine and the version of pyRevit plus the version of the engine plus the version of Revit. So if you see errors in this window that's being reported to you, if you send me a screenshot of this window, make sure you include the title so I can see what version of Revit, version of the Iron Python, and what version of pyRevit you're actually running on. I don't have to ask these questions from you again. So I'm going to close this window. You don't have to close it. You can stay open, but you don't have to. I'm going to open a new empty file. And you notice that there's a new tab in Revit called pyRevit. So this is the default set of tools that gets shipped with pyRevit. If I click on this, you'll see all these tools right here. pyRevit is really two things at the same time. It's a framework that lets you develop tools and extensions and stuff for Revit, but it also comes with a decent set of tools that I've developed over my life as an architect to sort of like, solve some of these problems and stuff like that working with Revit. And I'll show you a couple of these here. One of the most important things about this tab is this pyRevit slide out. So if you go here, you can see the about window, and right here, you can see the pyRevit version and a couple of other information, links to the things that we talked about, the wiki, the YouTube account, all that kind of stuff is right here. If you go to the last one, which is settings, you have access to all the pyRevit settings right from here. We won't get into a lot of these things because they're sort of like related to different pyRevit features. So if you use the telemetry, that's the configuration. If you don't use it, you don't really have to fiddle with it. But a couple of more important ones are under reporting levels, which is that window that shows up when the Revit loads. If you want to disable it, you can change that to no reporting, and you won't see that window on the Revit startup. So you can turn it up from here. If you want to keep seeing it, but you want it to go away automatically, you can actually set a sort of like a time in here, a couple of seconds, and it will close itself after that couple of seconds. Another one is the supported Revit versions. So there are a couple of versions of Revit that supported from 2017 to 2021. pyRevit detects the exact version of Revit that you have installed on your machine, and it kind of shows that information to you. So this is also a quick spot to see which versions of Revit you have installed, and you can enable and disable pyRevit on any of these versions if you want to. So if you want to use pyRevit 2021 and 2020, but not the other Revit versions, you can disable them from here. There's another good setting under UI UX, which is the Colorize open documents. And if this is turned on, pyRevit puts a very narrow, I'm going to close this. I'm going to turn on my magnifier. pyRevit adds a tiny line at the top of the ribbons, so you know which project each tab belongs to. So if I open more tabs in here, let me actually create more tabs, and I'm gonna start a new template here. So I have more projects open. And I'm also going to open a family, a Revit family right from here. Let's see, let's open a door. I'm gonna open, launch the magnifier. So it's easier to see. Okay, so you can see like these two first tabs, they belong to the same project. So the color is the same. And then you have a different color for a different project. And whenever you see a border like this, that means that tab belongs to the family. So it quickly color codes these tabs for you, so it's easier to find them when you're working with these tabs. If you go to pyRevit, the first section of pyRevit that we talked about, kind of like these settings, you'll get to, there's a lot of links to different websites and resources that are kind of helpful when you start developing for pyRevit. The Revit API docs is one of the really good ones that we'll talk about when we get to the sort of like creating your own tools. But the first really important set of tools for pyRevit are these toggles. We talked about the tab coloring. There's a toggle that you can turn on and off this tab coloring feature. So I can click on it and turn it off. If you go into presentation and stuff and you don't want these to be distracting, you can turn them off really quickly or turn them back on again like this. There's another Revit tool, the pyRevit tool is called the Minify Revit Ui. What it does is that, I'm going to go back to one of the projects so you can see there's a lot of tabs on top of Revit. And especially if you have more add-ons installed in Revit, this is quite a useful tool to reduce the amount of tabs that you generally work with. One of the things about pyRevit is that every tool that you can see there's a black dot in front of its name, that means it has options. pyRevit buttons in the Revit user interface have multiple click modes. So if I hold Shift on the keyboard and click on this tool, I can open its options instead of running the tool itself. In this case, I'm going to run the Minify Revit UI options and click the ones that I want to hide. Like, for example, I don't want to see these tabs. So I'm going to say hide selected. And whenever I activate these toggle, it'll hide these tabs in the Revit UI and sort of like minifies the UI, so I don't have to see all those tabs all the time. And if you turn it off again, it'll put it back again right there. This is especially important for some of the languages, like for example, in German, the names of these tabs are really long. So you very quickly run out of screen space and you kind of have to go through the side corner to be able to get to the tools. Let's open another project and let's talk about, let's open one of these and talk about the other toggles. So if you work, like I was an architect and I worked a lot on floor plans and ceiling plans. In this case, I have a floor plan for level 1 and a ceiling plan for level 1. And a lot of times you kind of have to, when you're working in an area, you kind of have to go back and forth between these two sort of like different two views. What's really annoying is that a lot of times they're at different scales. So you can come to pyRevit and say sync views and activate that. And every time you switch, pyRevit synchronizes the zoom and pan of the different views. So you can easily go back and forth between different views and sort of find what you want, right? You don't have to keep zooming back and forth in the same area. So that's kind of handy, and you can turn it off whenever you want to turn it off, which is completely fine. Another example would be if I go to a 3D view and I activate my section box. Oh, in this case, I have, let's go to this project. I have to open that's a central model. So in this project, I'm going to go and activate my section box. If you make any changes to your section box, but you want to toggle and not see the section box for a while, if you turn off the section box and sort of like turn it back on again from here, Revit will reset the size and location of the section box. So it's kind of annoying that way. What you can use is that if you have a custom section box set up, you can come to pyRevit and say, toggle the section box. And it would automatically hide that section box for you without really resetting. This is very handy if you have changed the rotation of the section box and all that kind of stuff. You have the same tool for imported categories. So if you have a lot of like CAD content and stuff like that imported into a view, but you don't want to see them at the moment, you can toggle them right from here, and it will turn them on and off. Part of it comes with a really good set of selection tools that are all in this selection panel. Oh, by the way, like these panels behave just like any other panel in Revit, so you can grab them and place them anywhere you want to while you're working with the tools. The first tool in here is called the pick tool. So I can go, let's say, go to level 1 here. And let's say I want to select all the doors in this view, but I don't want to do a box selection like this and select everything and then go and filter it. So I'm going to click on the pick tool. I'm going to say I want to select doors only. And when you do a box, it only picks up the doors. It doesn't pick up anything else. So it's quite handy when you're working on large projects, right? You don't have to select thousands of objects to be able to filter a couple of things in the middle. The list of this, it comes with a pre-default list of these categories. But again, there's a black dot in front of the name. So if you shift click on it, you can customize whatever category that you want to see on that tool, depending on whether you're an architect or a structural engineer or whoever else. You can easily add that, and whenever you click on this, you'll see those list of your favorite categories listed here. Same thing with the isolate tool. Isolate tool kind of does the same thing, but it isolates categories. So if I want to say doors only, I can quickly isolate them this way. Let me actually close this model really quickly and open it because it's a central model, and it's not going to let me make any changes to it. Okay, that would be better. Okay. Going back to pyRevit again. So isolate, I'm going to say isolate all the doors. It'll isolate all the doors for me, temporary hide isolate, and I can turn that off really quickly from here. And sort of like, that's a quick way of isolating different things. And it's kind of smart. So when you say isolate room tags, it knows that it has to isolate rooms also, because if you isolate room tags only, the rooms will be hidden. You wouldn't be able to see the room tags. So it's kind of smart that way, that it knows, what it really needs to isolate for a good view. There are a couple of selection tools in here. One of them is really, really powerful. It's got the selection memory. So let's say I want to select all the walls in this view and a couple of other views. I'm going to go say pick. I'm going to go say walls, select all the walls here. And I'm going to back to pyRevit tab. And here I'm going to say memory write, mwrite, right? So pyRevit writes these information about these walls to the memory. It kind of remembers them. So you can deselect now. And maybe I want to go to level 2. And here I want to say pick walls again and select a completely different set of walls. Now I want to go back to pyRevit again. And this time I'm going to say memory append. I want to add these new set of elements that I've selected and append them to the memory. Now, when I'm ready, let's say I want to go back to 3D view of this project. When I'm ready, I can say memory read, and it would reselect all those elements that I had selected in different passes. This is a great way to go between the different views. Let's say you have a big portion of the building that you have to move. You can go between different views, select the content that you need, separate the 2D components from the 3D components and all that kind of stuff. And then once you're ready, you can recall that selection, and all those elements that you selected in multiple different passes will be selected for you. And then maybe you can move that building in a different place, or do whatever that you want to do with that set of elements. So that's kind of a really handy set of good set of tools. The other one that I want to show you is that, let's say I have this floor plan and I want to go and say on the walls, I want to apply a cross solid pattern. Say my solid pattern. I'm going to pick a really bright color so it's easy to see. So all the walls in this view are going to be painted with a bright color. Now let's say I want to go back to level, and this is my working view, and I kind of want to see that change in here too. One of the things that you can do is that you can copy the state of a view. So I can say copy visibility graphics from this view and go to a different view, and you can just say paste state. And it would apply the same visibility graphic settings into this one. This is kind of like templates, view templates, but a lot of times, especially when you're working with what we call them working views, the views that you don't put on a sheet, it's a view that you generally work with. That's a quick way of getting around. Or let's say I have a 3D view like this, and I'm going to activate the section box here. And let's say I also want to go to another 3D view, and I want to see the same section box in here. So I'm going to come back to this one. I'm going to say copy state. Where is it? 3D section box. Go back to this one, paste state, 3D section box, and it would set that section box here again for me. And I can hit the toggle to sort of turn it on and off if I need to. So that's a great way of sort of matching a couple of different things between different views really quickly. So that copy and paste is pretty powerful tools. There are a couple of tools under analysis. You have a tool that lists all the roof slopes in a project, or gets you a parking count in your site plan if you have that active, and you can just click on it and it would give you the parking count, and it would separate it based on the different parking family types that you have and stuff. If you have any ideas for other tools, you can easily add to these tools, as I'll show you at the end of this discussion. Let's see what else is important. There is this make path.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
In the chat, there's a question coming.
Mm-hmm.
The Zoom chat.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can open.
Okay.
I didn't have
What
the chat
happens?
open.
What happens when you delete the element inside the memory?
Okay. So, okay, that's a great question. Let's say I want to go back to the 3D view, and let's say we delete that one, right? And that element doesn't exist anymore. So when you say memory read, you just don't get that selected. Right?
I see.
It's kind of fail-safe, so it doesn't select that piece for you, but you can keep it that way. And this memory is actually project dependent. So if you switch to a different project, it has its own memory. They're not going to override each other. So as you, and the memory would stay there even if you close Revit and open back again. So if you open back again and click multi-read, it will read the last memory that you had saved for the project.
Oh, that's great. Okay.
Yeah.
I also have a question. And calculate average area. What is this? Is this making chart? Or the
calculate average area. Oh, okay. So let's see if I can show you how that one works really quickly here. I'm trying to look for a plan that has a couple of rooms in it. Okay, so like for example, we have two rooms in here that are both called bedrooms, right? I'm going to select one of these rooms, select this room, and I'm going to say analyze calculate average area. It's going to find all the other instances of rooms that have the same name, and it would calculate an average area for you.
I see.
Right? In this case, it's so like 14 square meters is what the average that it calculates. It's great if you're working on, especially like housing projects that you have a lot of like unit A, unit B, unit C, and you want to be able to calculate these averages really quickly while you're designing. That's a sort of like quick way of getting around to them. One of the things, other things, that's a good question. One of the other things about the output window is that you can see these numbers whenever pyRevit lists a specific element for you, and you can click on this ID to actually select that element. In this case, it's this one. If I select this one, it'll select the other room. Or if you click on this sort of like magnifier, it'll zoom in enough, point the view to that specific element for you. Right? So it sort of like makes it very easy to find these elements very easily. And it kind of marks the one that you've clicked on. So if you're using this to go through a list of elements, you already know which one you've already clicked on.
I see. That is handy tool. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So I was going to show you how the make pattern tool works. This is arguably one of the more powerful and more popular tools in pyRevit. A lot of you might have already used it. I'm in a Revit drafting view, and I'm going to draw a sort of like a, I don't know, let's say a 2 feet by 2 feet. And I don't think you're using, like here in the United States, we use the imperial system. So sorry for all the weird numbers. So let's call this one here, and then this would be my standard tile. It doesn't have to be a square, so let's actually change it to a rectangle, for example. And I'm going to draw a couple of lines in here that this is going to be my base pattern, right? A couple of lines in here, and you don't have to draw lines only. You can actually use curves as well. So maybe I want to Throw a super in here too, or whatever, right? And then what I'm going to do is that I'm going to select all the lines that belong to my pattern. You don't have to select the bounding box. You don't even have to draw it. I generally draw this to be able to grab the opposite corners. I'm going to go to pyRevit, make pattern. Let's say I want to create a model pattern and say custom pattern. And I'm going to say create a field region for my pattern to automatically. And then I'm going to say, you have a couple of options for like scaling and rotation and flipping the pattern in different directions and all that kind of stuff. But I'm going to say create a pattern, pick one corner and the opposite corner of the box, and pyRevit will think and sort of like generate this pattern for you. Now, if I want to go to my field region tool and draw a field region, I should be able to change the type to something that matches the name of that pattern that was automatically created. So now I have a pattern like this that sort of like I created from here. One of the nice thing about the pattern tool is that at any point in time, if you decide that, hey, like I need this to be a different shape, you can go and reselect that, go to pyRevit, make pattern, pick the pattern that you already have, and sort of like recreate this. And pyRevit will update the pattern in the memory. So that's a great way of sort of like you always can update the pattern that you have created. And one of the things that I do is that I create a drafting view and I keep these in my project. So every time I want to make changes to this pattern, I can go and update that. Another one of the sort of like handy ones in pyRevit is if let's say I have this other pattern that I'm going to use, maybe this cross-hatch is fine. And let's say I want to create a pattern that's like a combination of these two, right? So I'm going to place that right here. And I'm going to select my lines, but I'm also going to select that field region that I selected, that I drew over this. I'm going to say make pattern, and let's say custom, let's call it combined pattern. And sure, create a field region. I'm going to say here, click and click. And it will generate a pattern for me. Now, if I copy this and use a different one, you'll see that I have a field region that's a combination of the two that I selected, right? So if you already have two different patterns in Revit, you're using the pyRevit to make pattern, you can actually combine them and scale them and rotate them the different ways to get to something else that sort of like what you want. And this is not two elements, this all of that information is inside the same pattern. So that's a great way of like combining tools. This make pattern tool is quite powerful. Now let's say you want to use this pattern in AutoCAD or in another application. You can come here without selecting anything. You can say combine pattern, and you can say export path file and select the location. Let's see, I want to select my desktop and say select. And it would export that. And if I go to my desktop, you'll see that there's a, where did it go? Custom pattern path file. And if you open it with a text file, you can see that all that information is exported to a path file. So you can use this with AutoCAD or any other application that needs path files, right? So it's actually quite a powerful pattern maker tool. There is a couple of tools under match. You can match properties and styles of different things in Revit. So let's say I have two dimensions in here. Change the scale of my view to something that's bigger. And let's say in this one, I'm going to go and write something under it, like verify in field, as we use in the US, to sort of like say that this dimension needs to be verified. And you kind of want to match a couple other dimensions that you have. Let's see another one here to this one. You can go to match. Again, there's a black dot in front of it, so you can shift click and configure this. You can select exactly what you want to match. Or like for the dimensions, you can match the above, below, or any other thing that's here. I'm going to say match, pick the source, and then whatever that you click on, it'll match the exact settings that you have for this to this dimension for the other ones. This tool also works on, let's draw a couple of walls. Let's say in this view, I'm going to go and say visibility graphics override by element. I'm going to use the cut pattern again as an example, apply color to it. But this is an instance override, right? So if you want to apply it to other things, you can just say match, pick this one, and apply it the same settings to other elements in Revit 2. So if you're working that way inside your view, this match tool is quite powerful. There's another version of this is called Match Paint that you can use to pick up a paint from a surface, as the video in the tooltip shows. Pick up a paint from a surface and apply it to other surfaces. Or there is one for Match Properties that you can pick up properties from one Revit element or element type and apply it to a completely different type. I'm going to show you how this one works. Let's see if I do have that family. I don't have that one. Let me go pick up a file that I wanted. Okay, that's cabinets is fine. So this is my cabinet making Revit model to create all the cabinet families that we used in the company. It's taking a while. Okay, while this is opening, if anybody has any question, that would be, I can, so why does it take so long? There's too many families in there apparently.
I have a question.
Okay, this is taking way too long. Okay.
Yeah, I used to. I use a previous version of pyRevit, and it shows like a different UI of the option of pick tool. So have you updated? Yeah, have you updated the option view of pick tool?
Oh yeah, so this if you click on it, this is sort of like a new thing that we added to pyRevit.
Mm.
And also
so
the Isolator tool have
so we can use
the same setting now.
Yeah, so we can use the selection box, selection check item box in pyRevit. I think the previous version doesn't have it, the custom checkbox.
Yeah. So if you look at the source code for the tool and stuff, you can see it's the same select from list that has options for checkboxes too. And you can see it in other tools, like if you want to say, I don't know, select sheets in a project or something like that. That this one doesn't have any, but I'll get to it. I'll show you when I get to those tools.
Okay.
Let me load just a real simple library in here. Actually, casework. Let's just load something from here. Base cabinets. Let's say I have these base cabinets. And let's say you have a handle material applied to this that's called cabinet handles. I'm going to go here and create a different type out of this. Well, change it to a different type. Let's say this is 24 inches. And let's say this one doesn't have that handle material is by category. It's by category. It's not set to what this one is, right? So you can go here and say match properties. I want to match properties of elements, not views. I'm going to click on this one. It'll pull all the type and instance parameters of that element that I selected. I'm going to say search for handle. So handle material is a type parameter on that casework type. I'm going to say select. It'll pick up the value. And when I click on this, it'll apply the same value to this type. So if I go here and say edit type, you see the same values applied to the handle material right there, right? So that's a good, this one right here on the match properties. It's a really good match properties tool to be able to pick up. And you can do it between types and instances at the same time. So that's pretty powerful. You can even do it between families that are not the same. As long as the name of that property is the same, it'll apply the same value to whatever that element that you have selected. Another one of the really good tools is that, let's say I have a couple of views selected and I want to change the way these views are named. The tool is called revalue, and you can change the value of a property, in this case, name of a view, to something else. What you have to do is to explain or basically describe what the original pattern is to this tool, and then what the new pattern that you want to be. So I'm going to say the original pattern is that it's level plus a number. And I'm going to put number in curly brackets because I want this tool to pick that piece up, right? And then I'm going to say the new one, I'm going to say, put that number here, F, or I don't know, 1F level or something like that, right? So I can see the old pattern looks like this. We'll pick up a piece of that pattern. We'll reuse it in a new pattern in a different way. And you can see like the old value is the new value. And when you say sort of like apply the new values, it'll rename these views for you very quickly right here. What's nice is that you can actually, they don't have to be exactly the same. So if I had a level 1 and level 2, it would apply the same thing here. Let's really do that really quickly. So in this case, that would be level 2. Oh, bad naming. Nope. Okay, so there's one level 1 and one level 2. I'm gonna go back here, level. I'm gonna just use N here instead of the full number, and then F, and then level. So you can see like level 2 is called 2F level. When you apply, all of these will be named correctly. This is a great tool to change naming conventions that you have on properties and names and all that kind of stuff. There's a couple of really good tools on edit and group and whatnot that you can sort of like play with and figure out. There is another tool in pyRevit that's great for when you want to, I'm going to reset the section box on this view. Let's say I want to align the section box with this piece of the axis way because I want to work on the section of that. I can go to 3D and say orient section box to face, and then I'm going to pick a face, and it would rotate the section box to be aligned with that face, right? So now I can cut it exactly. To be parallel with that piece. And I can work on that piece of the building very easily. Getting this rotation exact with something is really hard generally. So you can use this sort of like the tool to rotate your section box. pyRevit has a lot of really good tools to work with sheets. I'm going to go here and sort of like open the sheets. There are no sheets on this project. I'm going to go under sheets. One of the first tools that I want to show you is called the batch sheet maker. So you can use this tool to create a lot of sheets all at once. I'm going to launch the tool. And I'm going to say, I want a series of sheets from A100 to A110. And let's say they all have the same sheet name. You can create single sheets too, like 120 with whatever sheet name. And like any other, or like a series of tools, like M100, M200 with sheet name, right? The trick is that the way you describe the ranges or the series of tools or series of sheets or single sheets, and then there has to be a single tab between them so the tool can recognize the range from the name of that sheet that you want to give it. So any of these can be anything that you want to type here. They don't have to match it. And then you can say you want to create sheets or create placeholders. So if you get this list from one of your consultants, you can actually create placeholders really easily. If you create sheets, it's going to ask you for a title block. I'm going to say create. I don't have any title blocks, so I'm going to just say no title blocks. And it's going to generate all those sheets for me here. So 100 to 110, a single 120, and M100 and M200. So that's a very quick way of getting to a lot of different sheets in your project. There are a whole bunch of other tools in here that help you work with sheets and stuff like that. These two are quite powerful, that you can copy views between multiple different sheets, so you can use those. I'm going to create a couple of revisions for this project, so we can talk about revision tools, and then go to the revision category. There are two really good tools in here. It's called set revisions on sheets and turn off revisions on a sheet, like set, remove, and turn off. So I'm going to use this, and I'm going to say I want to set revision 2 and 3 on a series of my sheets. And I can select a couple here, and maybe these two also. And then I'm going to say set revision. And it gives me a list of all these revisions that's been set. So if I go to, let's say, M200, and I open its revisions, I can see that revision 2 and 3 are applied to this sheet, right? Using the same sort of like category, you can go and say, create a revised sheet set. So let's say I want to publish all the changes on the revision 2, and I can say create a sheet set. And it tells me these sheets are under that revision, and I created a sheet set for you. So if I go to print window now, that's the standard Revit print window. Under select view and sheets, you can say there's a view sheet set that's for revision 2, and it has those sheets already selected. So that's a quick way of just coming here, selecting the sheet set that you want and hitting print and getting all those sheets really quickly out of Revit. You don't have to go through and verify all of these using your schedules and all that kind of stuff. So that's also very handy. There are a couple other tools that help you like find all the revised sheets, and or if you have a cloud, you can select it and find all the other sheets that have the same kind of revision and all that kind of stuff. There are a couple of really handy revision tools. We'll talk about this manage Keynote and pyRevit print sheets now. There's a couple of tools on the project, these that are fairly a little bit more advanced. So there's like wipe model component that can delete almost anything in your Revit model. This is great if you want to clean up like all the sheets, all the materials, and all that kind of stuff when you want to send your model to a contractor. That's a good way, but it's very destructive. So make sure like the people that are using this know what they're doing. Otherwise, they just delete stuff from the project. Another one of these is, let's say I want to have this family open. And inside this family, as I'm designing this family, I have a series of types. And it's hard to see whether your family flexes correctly or not. So you can use this cycle types tool in pyRevit that changes your default type in your family, so you can easily cycle the family and make sure it flexes correctly. That's kind of a powerful tool. And then the other one that I wanted to mention is this, where'd it go? This get Revit Info. If you click on this, you can select any Revit model from any version, and it will give you the information about that Revit model, what version it was created in, the last save path, and all that kind of stuff. And if it has project information, it will list those project information also. That's a great tool if you get a Revit model from somebody else and you don't know what version it is and stuff like that. It gives you a lot of that information. Let's talk about the print tool and the Keynote management tool. Let me get rid of a whole bunch of these things that we don't need. And I'm going to keep that project because I have a lot of sheets in this project. So if you go here, I have a lot of sheets in this project in this template already set up. Under my schedules and quantities under control, I have one that's the sheet set, the sheet list basically, that's list of all the sheets. You might have something like this, that it's your architectural drawing index. But what basically we do in the companies is that we create some sort of a parameter combination to get this schedule to be sorted correctly. pyRevit uses this sorting that you have in your schedule to print the sheets in order that you would sort of like define in the schedule, right? I'm going to go and launch the print sheets tool. And you can see that in my project, that's called project 2, it'll pick up these two drawing indices that I showed, right? Whichever one you want to print. Let's say this is the main one that I want to print. And it would pull all the sheets in order of their listing in the schedule. So it sort of like mirrors that order. And then I can add indices to the name of the file, and I can see a preview of the file name in here too. So as it prints the PDFs, it'll add a 3-digit number in front of them, so they all get sorted correctly when they print as individual sheets, right? You can even change the starting index. Let's say you want to start from 100, and it will start from there. And then if you have any non-printable sheets, which is like placeholder sheets, you can reserve numbers for them right from here. The other thing that it has is that it's got a setting for naming format. So depending on who are you sending these PDFs, or however you want to work in your company, you can come up with a different naming format for these PDFs. Like in this one, there's no underscores, but this one has underscores in its name, and you can see it changes the naming format. Or you can edit the format, create a custom format for yourself, pick up values from project, from the title block parameters, from sheet parameters, all that kind of stuff, and combine them in ways. Let's say you want to grab something like from here and put it inside the sheet name or something like that. You can basically define this to be the format for that sheet name. And then when pyRevit is printing, it'll actually use that format to print all these PDFs. Another option that you have is to combine everything into one PDF. There's a lot of like options that get disabled because like the print index doesn't mean anything when you combine everything into one PDF. but it also prints everything in order inside that same single PDF. The way this tool works is that it adds a non-printable character in front of the sheet number to get Revit to force Revit to sort these sheets the way you wanted it to be. But it does it temporarily. So when you hit print, it applies all these changes to the sheets, get the sheets printed, and then it removes all those settings from the sheets when you're done. So just know that about this tool, that it sort of like uses the hacky way, but it does the job and it gets the things in sheets in order. One of the other options that you have is that when you're selecting your page settings, you can select a variable paper size. So when I click that, pyRevit automatically takes a look at these sheets and picks a print setting that is more appropriate for that sheet. So it recognizes that everything is like 25 by 36, but maybe my title and I don't know, maybe some other sheet here need to be in color. So I can set the print setting, and pick a different print settings for these two specific PDFs. As it's printing, it'll use maybe a colored print setting for one of the sheets, and it goes back to the a different one for a different. And it can memorize this setting too. The guide is set here that it can go create a specific parameter name on your sheet, and it would store this value on the sheet, so you don't have to do this every time. It kind of remembers that process. Now, the printer is very important. The printer has to have the capabilities for these kind of prints and stuff like that. And our companies, we always have, like, I don't know, we're using Review or something like that. That's a pretty good PDF printer. So sometimes you may see errors and bugs that's related to the limitations of that printer. I've tried to build the tool in a way that's sort of like powerful. So if I don't know, switch to something else, it'll tell you that this is not supported. And like you can see that, you know, some of these configurations are not compatible with the printer that you want to print with. So that's generally how the tool is laid out. And the last one that I wanted to show you is the Manage Keynotes tool. So in this case, I'm going to switch to this other project. I'm going to go under Annotate, the Keynote settings. And I'm going to create a Keynote file on the desktop for this project. Oops, not folder. I need a text file. Let's call it Keynotes. I'm going to assign it here, reload, everything looks good, no warnings and stuff like that. The Keynote file is set up. Now I can go to pyRevit and I can say Manage Keynotes. And it will open the Keynote Editor for me. And I don't have any categories. So I'm going to say add a category. The category needs a key, a unique key. So let's call it C1. And I'm going to call this, let's see, this is site elements. You have a couple options here to change the casing and stuff. Add category, and now I have that first category, and I can select that category, and I'm going to say a couple of keynotes in here. So K1. Notice that there's a red box in here that shows me all the keys that I've already used. So you can't use C1 again because it's already used. So this helps everybody sort of like pick unique keys for the keynotes and not override each other's work. So let's just say Keynote 1. I'm going to add that one, add another one, K2. And you can see the parent is already created, sort of like selected for the keynote. And I'm going to add the keynote. So I have these two keynotes right there, right? I don't think I actually have any keynotes on that, any keynote families on that model. Let's switch this one. Because I do have, yeah, I do have one here. Okay, so let's really quickly switch this project to browse and come on, desktop. Let's use that one here. Okay, so I'm going to go to pyRevit Keynote Manager, and I can double click on this, and I can actually place my keynote right there. And when you cancel out, it applies the keynote, right? And if I go back to it, you can see there's an 1x in front of the keynote. It tells you that this keynote has been used one time somewhere. If I click on it and say, show me, it'll give me a list of where this keynote is used. And if you click on it, it'll take you to that keynote, right? Going back to the tool, you can search for the tools. So, well, in this case, we don't have anything. So I'm going to go edit that one into Keynote 2, maybe. Click the keynote, and I'm going to search for one. So it's a pretty fast system of searching across your keynotes. You can search a lot of keynotes that way. There's a lot of filters with different ones. If you, like in America, we use the CSI master format to put section numbers inside the keynotes and stuff, you can filter, or you can create regular expression and all that kind of stuff. You can filter these keynotes the way you want to, and it kind of remembers that that filter. So if you close this and open it again, it'll remember the last search that you had. So whatever the list of keynotes that you're most comfortable using right now, it'll stay active on your window. Or like for example, you can say, show me everything that I've used in this current view, right? So if I'm marking up bathroom drawings and stuff like that, when I open my Keynote Manager, it only shows me the stuff that I've already applied in this view. So I can very easily pick the same one and stuff. And that's the filters, and you can clear it from here pretty quickly. And you can add more categories and more keynotes and all that kind of stuff. It also, in this newest version, we added support to you be able to work with the BIM 360. So if you have BIM 360 installed, the Keynote Manager can now use the BIM 360 API to keep the text files synchronized between everybody else's. I want to show you, this tool is also multi-platform. So now we have a little bit of time. Let me, in the background, launch 2019. And I kind of use that to show you how multiple users can use this Keynote, the Keynote Manager, to edit the same Keynote file. But that's basically most of the things about the pyRevit Keynote Manager. There are a couple of options here that I'm still working on. For example, very quickly in the future, you're going to see an option here that allows you to change the key of a keynote. So like key to K2, you want to change it to K3 or something else, and it would correct the Revit model for you. One of the nicest things about this mechanism is that it is fully backward compatible. So if I use Revit's own Keynote Manager right now, let's say I want to place a user keynote right here, Revit can read that text file without any troubles, right? I can see these keynotes right here, and I can apply another keynote right there. If I go and open that keynote file, this Revit is opening. I'm going to click on this and open that text file. You can see that it looks just like a standard keynote file in Revit, except that it has a couple of lines that start with a pound. Revit doesn't see these lines. These are basically comments in that file. So pyRevit uses these comments to store some information about this database, which is going to be the Keynote database, to be able to store all this stuff in it. This means that you can archive your project that you have used Keynote Manager in pyRevit with, and open it in a couple of years and not be dependent on any other add-on or anybody else's cloud platform and stuff like that to get access to Keynotes or a custom format of the database and stuff. It stores everything in that standard text file. It's fully backward compatible. It just gives you a way of managing that. I just opened another project in Revit 2019, and I'm going to set this project to kind of use the same Keynote. Okay. And I'm going to come back to Revit 2020, open my Keynote Manager here. By the way, this window remembers its location and setting per project. So if one project you're used to having this here and another project you want to put it here, it'll remember that per project. So let's say I'm in this Keynote and I want to say edit, right? If I go back to 2019 and open the Manage Keynotes, you see that my name is editing that keynote. So it's sort of like can work together. The edit keynote is disabled for me on this one until the other person makes that change and commits that change to the source file. It kind of helps you avoid all these overrides that people do and saving over each other's work when they're working with the Keynote text file. So that's how generally that works. If you have any questions, I'm done kind of showing you all the tools in pyRevit, the basic ones. If you have any questions, let's talk about those right now, and then I can show you how you can develop your own extensions for pyRevit too.
Thank you very much. 誰か質問等ありましたら、今この段階で、質問していただければと思います。どなたか質問等ありますか？
石井さん、こんにちは。豊田ですけども、
こんにちは。
今、授業でしてくれたところ以外のことでも、pyRevitだったらよろしいんですかね、質問。それとも今話した内容だけ。
そうですね。次に開発の話すると思うので、今は今のこの、ボタンの中で他にも聞きたいボタンがあれば、もしくはこの紹介したボタンの中で質問等あればっていう感じで。
わかりました。じゃあ今大丈夫です。ありがとうございます。
1個質問いいですか？
はい。
マッチプロパティの、
はい、
日本語で。
はい。お名前を教えていただけると嬉しいです。
マッチプロパティの機能で、シート、山崎と申します。
こんにちは。
こんにちは、はじめまして。
はい。
マッチプロパティの機能で、シートの、例えばスケール、ビュースケールとかを、マッチプロパティでコピー、ペーストできるかを聞きたいんですけど。
Okay. So, Ethan, we have a question for the match property button. So can we, in seat, there's a scale property. Can we change the scale property with this button, match property?
For between different views?
For different seat? Yeah, different view in seat.
That's a great question. So let's see, I don't know. It's a good way to find out. So let's say I have second floor is this one. I can say match properties between views. And I have the second floor. Let's search for scale, view scale, select, and then first ones, and then select. And if I go here, yep, you could match the scale. It works. I didn't know, but it works.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Of course. You can actually apply to multiple ones. So if you go here in the views, you can actually select more than one. So you could pick up from one view and apply to like 10 other different views.
I see. はい。大丈夫でしょうか？はい。Okay. Anything else? 他には何かございますか？大丈夫でしょうか？はい。Okay. So we can continue.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Let's talk about how you can create your own tools in Revit. Let's say you just installed pyRevit and you're kind of happy with the tools and stuff, but you have ideas about something else that you want to add to pyRevit. As I mentioned, pyRevit buttons have different click modes. So one of them is shift that we used quite a lot. If you shift on something, you get to the settings, right? One of the default one that works on all the tools is that if you hold Alt on the keyboard and click on any tool, it'll open the Windows Explorer and it will take you to the source script for that button, right? It's a Python script that every time you click on that tool, it would run that script, right? So let's go and create one of these for ourselves. The way that buttons in Revit work is that there's always a tab, there's a panel like this is called a panel. And then inside the panel, you have a push button or something like that that has the tool in it. So I'm going to go right here on my desktop, and I'm going to create a folder. I'm going to give it a specific name. Let's say, what is the name of the Revit user group? Tokyo Revit user group? Tokyo Revit user group. And that's the name of the folder. But the way pyRevit extensions work is that there's a bundle that is basically a folder with a specific name. So the name can be whatever it wants to be, but it should end with extension, right? So whatever the name is, .extension, pyRevit recognizes this as a pyRevit extension. Inside of this, I can go create another folder and say I want a Tokyo .tab. And that means that I want a tab in Revit with that name. Inside of it, I can get a new folder and say, let's call it main tools panel. And that creates a Revit panel for me. Inside of this, I'm going to say first button, first tool, .push button. So as you notice, I'm creating a lot of folders that have a specific ending in their name. If you go to the pyRevit developer docs here, and you take a look at right here, the bundles, there's a list of how pyRevit bundles are and what you can find in here, basically. So there's an explanation on everything. So the ones that we used, command bundles, push button bundle, this is what we used. That extension ends in push button, and it can requires a script and a couple of other things and whatnot. And you can create a tool with it. There's full documentation on exactly how these work. But generally, there are two groups of them. They're either command bundles that when you click on them runs something and does something, or they are UI bundles that result in creation of the UI elements. So in this case, we created a couple of, under the extension, we created two UI bundles. And inside of it, we created a command bundle, right? Inside of this command bundle, I'm going to go and place a Python script file. Oops. Yes, but not to PU, to PY. And I'm going to steal one of the icons from pyRevit. Let's call it, I don't know, so I like this triangle. Let's alt-click on that tool and go find the icon that's been used by that tool. And I'm going to place it inside my bundle, right? So it's a series of directories. The last one, which is our command bundle, has a script and an icon, right? And all of this is placed inside TokyoRock.extension. So I'm going to go to pyRevit here, settings. And I'm going to say, pyRevit, you can find my extensions under this directory, right? So from now on, every time you launch pyRevit, pyRevit would look for extra extensions under this directory path. I'm going to say save setting and reload. pyRevit, I'm going to save that configuration, but also reload pyRevit in Revit while Revit is running. This is one of the other really powerful things about pyRevit. You don't have to close Revit and your project and stuff to make changes to pyRevit. You can just reload everything in place. So there's a Tokyo Rock tab, the main tools panel, and that first tool with the icon that we created. It's really as easy as this to add something to pyRevit, right? And if I click on this, well, nothing happens because we didn't put anything inside that script, right? So I'm going to open, let's say, open my VS Code. And VS Code is the one that I generally use. You can, use whatever text editor that you want to use. Let's remove this one here, add a folder. I'm going to go to desktop, this extension, and I'm going to add that right here so I can see the full directory structure right here, right? So the tab, panel, push button, and the script. And I can open my script and let's say, I want that, let's say print test. Let's make this bigger too, so it's easier to see. Okay. Now I'm going to close this browser window because we don't need it anymore. Go back here. Notice that I didn't close Revit, don't close my project or anything like that. There's no compilation. And it runs the tool. It works, right? So let's say I want to list all the walls in this project. The rest of this is basically just learning Python and how Python works. It's pretty simple. It's for the any of you that haven't really used Python before, it's fairly simple language. So like I can do a couple of things in here. I can write a really easy Python program right here. And if any of you doesn't have any Python experience, you can really understand what's going on, right? So I'm going to say name, let's say Ehsan. So I'm creating a variable and putting a value in it. Or I can say for in a list of names, like, I don't know, like apple, orange, pear, print, I. Or like instead of I can use a better name. Let's call it fruit. And put fruit here. And I'm also going to print the name here. So it's very easy to understand that when I run this, I'm going to create a variable, put up some value in it, print that value, and then I'm going to loop over a list of different things, grab each one and print them, right? It's really as easy as that. Click on it. That's exactly what happens. We get Ehsan, apple, orange, and pear, right? Python is super simple to pick up. It's a very easy language. It's also very powerful. So you can go very deep in it and kind of learn the exact internals and how it works and stuff like that and become an advanced programmer. But it's on the surface of it is a very easy program to use. So one of the things that I want to emphasize again is that if you're writing sort of like C# applications and all that kind of stuff for Revit, you know that you have to close Revit, you have to test your application, compile it again, load the Revit back again, open the project that you want to test this tool on, and sort of like run that. And it's quite time consuming that way. This is just making changes and double clicking on the tool and doing stuff again. A lot of these tools that come with pyRevit, you can just take a look at them and see how they're built and what how I'm doing a couple of stuff in it to be able to see how things work. Like for example, you know that this, let's pick something that's small, simpler. Like this make pattern tool has a window. Like you want to know how you can create a window like this in pyRevit. If I'll click on the tool, you can see that there's a script, there's a Python module, and there's this one make pattern window, which is a XAML file, right? So I'll show you, I'll go to my source, the pyRevit source code, to show you where that is. You don't have to memorize all of this. What am I doing? pyRevit forms. I just want to show you that it's very simple to work with these tools in pyRevit. So I'm going to use Visual Studio to be able to edit this XAML file that I showed you, which if you are sort of like if you have used C# and the Windows WPF platform, you know that it's basically a text file that describes what that window is, right? And we can load this inside our Python script. So in this example, I'm going to close all of this stuff, and I'm going to go to the tools, and I'm going to click on make pattern window. So see in Visual Studio, I don't have any source code in here. There's no C# code. I'm just using Visual Studio to edit this XAML file. And let's say here, I want to say, I don't know, like just add something to the name of this, right? Some changes. And notice I don't have to compile anything. I don't have to do anything. I just use Visual Studio to be able to edit that text file and see the changes that I'm making visualized right in front of me, right? If I click on this make pattern tool again, you see that these changes show up right here. So there's no compilation process. There's no nothing. Every time you make a change, click on the tool again, you'll see the changes reflected. The rest is really you learning Python, which is basically we have a great course in here inside the developer docs. This is a great starting point. Well, it doesn't teach you Python. There's a lot of resources online to learn Python and the basics of like programming with Python. So I didn't want to create just another one in here. But if you know the basics of Python, it gets you through how you can use Python to work with Revit API. So it teaches you what Revit API is, and it teaches you like how you can collect data from Revit, how you can explains how Revit documents work, which is the Revit project, and how you can make changes and all that kind of stuff. I'm going to show you an example of how easy that would be. Let's say I want to calculate the volume of all these walls that are in my project, right? I'm going to go to my Python. Now, a lot of you, this might be really weird, like not fully understanding what I'm doing, but once you get started with Python, it would make a lot of sense. So I'm going to say from pyRevit. pyRevit is also a Python module that provides some of the functionality that you might need when working with the Revit API. Import Revit and maybe db. And I'm going to say here walls equals db filtered element collector, which this is a mechanism provided by the Revit API. I can go to pyRevit and click on this API docs here, and will take me to the documentation for Revit. So let's say Revit 2020 is what we're using, filtered element collector class. You can see that documented here, and it explains that this is used to search, filter, and all that kind of stuff. And I'm talking about all of these in this video. So if you want to know more about this, watch those videos. I'm going to go here. I'm going to run this on this Revit document. And I'm going to have it of class maybe wall, and then 2 elements. So let's say for wall, in walls, print wall, right? So I collected all the walls in the Revit model using the Revit API. This is pretty much all Revit API, that line. That's just, I'm using filter element collector, and I'm telling it to search in that Revit document, give me anything that's of a class wall, and convert them to elements, and it would give me all the walls, and then I can iterate over them and get all my walls. So I can go here, click on this, and click on the tool again. And I would get 2 walls in here, the 2 walls that I have inside the project, right? Now, I want to read a property of that wall, which is called volume. Now, in your language might be called something else, and there's a way to safely get those. So if you share your tool with somebody else that has a different language, it would still run. But we have a volume property that's calculated automatically by Revit. Let's say I want to read that. I'm going to say total volume. Let's call it 0. And volume parameter equals wall lookup parameter. I want to look up a parameter that's called volume. And if that volume parameter is available, let's add the total volume, add that to the total volume as double, because it's a double value. It's a floating point number. So what we do is that we iterate over all the walls, get every wall, look up the parameter that's called volume. From that parameter, grab its value and add it to the total volume, right? And then at the end, we want to make sure that, hey, print total volume is, and I'm going to place it here, but I'm going to use Python formatting. So I'm going to grab that total volume, and I'm going to basically place it inside that string once it's printed. Go back to Revit, Q, click on the tool. We're not printing walls anymore, but we just calculated our total volume right there. So as you can see, if you can get used to the ways of like collecting information and all that kind of stuff, you can very easily make changes to elements and grab information and combine them in whatever you want to create and whatnot. And Python is very simple. pyRevit gives you a lot of tools. What else? And the Revit API is fairly simple in terms of like just be able to use, grab some information and grab the data and stuff. And as you get more advanced and you want to figure out how to do things, the existing a lot of tools in here and a lot of modules and stuff like that that are available, it's a great place to start and see how things are done. You can also ask in the forums, and people are going to be sharing code with you and sort of like helping you out and all that kind of stuff. But basically, this is how you create tools with Python under pyRevit. pyRevit can also run C# and Visual VB.NET. It's not limited to Python only. But by far, Python is kind of the easiest one to use and easiest to pick up. And it's a really good way to sketch out the idea for your tool. Maybe you create a tool in Python like this, very simply, and you test it, you share it with a couple of teammates. And once you figure out that this is a really good tool and it's really valuable and saves you a lot of time, maybe you can ask somebody else, or if you know C#, then you can start writing in C# and make it more memory safe and efficient and all that kind of stuff using a different language. But this gives you a very good environment to be able to test out the ideas without really losing time. It also gives you the capability. Let's say this script is right here, and I'm going to add a couple of, more walls in here, and I can just run it, and it would calculate the new volume of the walls for me. So it's a very quick way of just having a couple of tools handy to be able to do things for. And you can even have this script open on the side, and you can make some changes to it and run it again and make it work differently. You don't have to create windows and make it fancy and all that kind of stuff to get your job done. A lot of stuff you can just make changes in the script and rerun it, and it will do the job for you. Once you want to start sharing it with somebody else, it becomes a different deal. Now, let's say you have created this extension and you want to share it with somebody else, right? All you have to do is that if you know how to use Git and Git sort of like mechanism and stuff, you can publish it to GitHub, or you can even just turn it into a zip file, or however you want to share it to somebody else. Give this zip file to somebody else. They can extract it on their whatever location that they want, and they can add the path to their pyRevit here, if it comes back up again, they can add the path, and they'll load all those tools inside their Revit. So it's a very good way of also sharing all these tools with somebody else. pyRevit also has a good extension mechanism, it's an extension sharing mechanism. So there's this extension tool that, let's say I want to get pyApex extension from Alexei Melnikov, and I want to install that extension on my desktop because it's one of those directories that I introduced to pyRevit. And I can just click on this, and pyRevit automatically pulls that from GitHub, drops it on my desktop, and reloads itself. So there's a whole bunch of duplicate errors that you see because Alexei hasn't updated his extension. So there's some of the changes, but it's just warning messages. The tools will still work. It'll load, and you can see there's a new tab here. This is pyApex, right? It's exactly this one. See, pyApex.extension. That's the extension that he created. He published it to GitHub. pyRevit can download it, and very quickly you get a whole new set of tools. And if you all click on any of these tools, it'll take you to the source code, just like the other pyRevit tools that you got. It works exactly like everything else. As a matter of fact, all these tools that you see here is actually a pyRevit extension that I've created for pyRevit. So pyRevit is really a framework under all of this that does and make things work. I just happen to create a set of tools that I end up using, but there's nothing stopping you from making changes to this or sort of like creating your own. Today, I merged 5 changes. So if you go under pyRevit pull requests, I merged 5 changes that came from a couple of different pyRevit users. They made some modifications to the tools. They wanted to work slightly differently. Some of them had bugs or different sorting and all that kind of stuff. So I just, they published those changes to the main repo. I'll take a look at them. I'll merge them to the repo. Everybody else will get the benefit of using the new tools. So if you want to sort of like get a little bit more involved into Revit development and stuff, pyRevit is a great place to start. Let's see if you have any questions.
Thank you very much.
Of course.
Yeah, it was a great session. We learned a lot. I think the information is really rich. Thank you very much. Yeah, so I have one question first, maybe. So if we want, in Japan, Revit user, they want to use in Japanese. And I was thinking this pyRevit tool is really cool to use in Japan as well. So I would like to make that in Japanese as well. So do you have any experience some other country try to translate this tool and have their own language?
Yeah, so one of the nicest things that happen is that if you go to the pyRevit homepage and go to getting involved, there is a section for help translate pyRevit. And there's a table and there's this list of languages that I've listed here. And there's an Airtable that lists all I'm not signed up here, but it lists all the pyRevit tools and has all these different languages in front of them. So you can translate the name of the tools. So if I go here and go under settings and go under UI UX, I can switch this to Japanese.
That's great. Okay, I see.
Where's
Japanese is under the Italian. Yeah.
Yeah. So save settings and reload. And I think we have quite a lot of these tools actually translated to Japanese. It's not everything about the tools, mostly the names right now. But we should be able to see a lot of these names getting translated quickly. Maybe not Japanese. But if anybody wants to go in there and start translating the name of the tools, maybe they'll try something else. Maybe another language that have more translation. Let's use I don't know, maybe Chinese. Chinese. Let's see. I'm not sure which one has a full list of translations. But the Revit window really supports the different namings and stuff. Let's see if this one works. I might be doing something wrong. Maybe not all of these languages have. Let's close Revit. Might be doing something wrong. Yeah, but and also in Python, you can actually type in whatever language that you have inside the strings to print them.
Right,
so if you
right.
want to help the translations and all that kind of stuff, that's completely possible.
I see. Thank you very much.
Yeah, of course.
And okay. じゃあ誰かこの機会なのでトイラさん質問先ほどのはいできれば英語でお願いします。
Thank you very much for today.
Of course.
合ってます。
Of course.
あと、this year I start pyRevit and I had a lot of fun. So thank you very much for.
Of course. Thank you.
Yeah. I have a question about UI. I test some application in pyRevit and I want to change to C# application.
Okay.
And I want to なんていうのかな
日本語でもどちらでも
すいません。
大丈夫です。
WPF I ask ゆうこさん to translate English. 大丈夫でね、WPF の、pyRevit 側の WPF を GitHub でXaml ファイルまでは見つけられたんですけど、いわゆるビューモデルっていうか、そのコマンドと UI を結びつけるのを pyRevit ではどのクラスでやってるのかなっていうのがちょっと僕見つけられなかったので、もし Git 上にそのファイル等があるなら、もしくはなくてもどういうふうにそのビューモデルとしてクラスみたいなのを作っているのかというのをちょっとお聞きしたいんですけれども。
Okay, the question is about UI Xaml, and we can find Xaml file in Python folder, but he was wondering how bind the data. So usually in C# we have view model and that kind of stuff to bind together.
So here I'm working on you go to pyRevit and then the developer docs. I'm actually working on a couple of sessions here, GUI basics, reactivity, and multi-threadedness. And there are a couple of examples in here. I haven't made the videos right now, but I'm working on this to sort of like explain how you can bind the data to the class properties and stuff like that in Python and get it automatically updated. So watch this page. I'll publish a video soon.
Okay, thank you very much.
Of course, of course.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you. And 他に誰か質問ありますか？
すいません。質問してもいいですか？乾です。
はい。
日本語になっちゃうんですけれど、お願いします。今日はありがとうございました。それで、pyRevit を使って、その、ダイナモの Python、カスタムノードを、その、Python で書いたりするときに、なんかこう、有効な使い方というか、適切な使い方がもしおすすめのものがあったら教えてください。
Okay, I will translate. So thank you for this today's session. It was great information. And she has question. She's Dynamo user. So if we have some useful tips, use Python node in Dynamo using Revit. If we have some.
Yeah, of course. So. I mean, pretty much the same thing that you use with pyRevit, you can do with Dynamo in the Python nodes. pyRevit has a module that has some sort of like this functionality. You won't be able to access that obviously inside Dynamo because it's just part of pyRevit. But the way that you work with the Revit API is exactly the same. So whatever that you learn using pyRevit, you can apply when you're creating Python components in Dynamo as well. And there's really no difference between the two.
Okay,
I wanted to show you something in here as well. This is the new project that I'm working on. This one.
ダイナモで使うときの Python コードっていうのは pyRevit で使っている Python コードのモデュールと Revit API が一緒なので、ほとんど一緒なので、pyRevit で書いたものをダイナモで書くってことは非常にたやすいと思いますという答えです。
ありがとうございます。
So just now that we were talking about Dynamo, and sort of like getting into development and creating programs and stuff for Revit, if you're more comfortable with a visual programming environment, there's this other project that I'm working on right now with Ad McNeil at the company that's called Rhino Inside Revit. The website for the project is right here, rhino3d.com inside Revit. And that take you to the homepage. There's a getting started page with a video that Scott has created that basically takes you through what project is and their guides on every sort of like single aspect of Revit that we are working on. Obviously, it's a work in progress, but for example, if you want to work with walls in Revit, you can use Python, Rhino Inside Revit components to work with that. And I'll show you very quickly how this works here. This is Grasshopper, and I'm going to open a new project. And I'm going to throw a wall in here, a couple of walls in here. And let's say I want to grab the geometry of these walls and I want to take them to Rhino, right? And I want to export it or maybe run analysis on them and stuff. So I can run Grasshopper and I can say Revit primitives, graphical element, select multiple elements, and these are my walls, finish. And if I inspect the value, I can see there are a couple of walls listed right there, right? And I can go to Revit tab, which gives me a lot of like different tools and utilities to work with Revit. And I can go under element and say element geometry. And I'm going to pass it to it. And if I open Rhino now, you can see that the geometry of these walls is extracted as inside Rhino. So if you're used to working with Grasshopper and sort of like the visual environments and all that kind of stuff, this is a great environment to get used to. It has a couple of benefits in comparison to Dynamo. Dynamo is a very similar tool, but it works completely differently. One of the greatest things about Rhino Inside Revit is that it has access to Rhino's geometry engine. So now you can do a lot of stuff about those geometries. Like if I can grab, I don't know, like mathematics, I can run volume analysis on these geometries, right? Very easily. And it's all parallelized and super fast and all that kind of stuff. Like I want to get the centroid of all these geometries that I got here. So for analysis, for anything like that is super powerful. And we are also creating components that you could like work the other way too. Let's say in Rhino, I want to create a line in here and then get a curve component. And then select that curve inside of Rhino, and then pass that to Revit, add a wall. Actually, it's on the walls, add a wall by curve. I'm going to pass that to the curve. If I go back to Revit, you see that there's a new wall here that just got created by Rhino Inside Revit. And that's all I had to do really to create that wall. I can go close this one. And maybe let's bring that into the foreground and do a slider and attach that to the height. And then I can do this, right? So it has super good interactivity and all that kind of stuff. Grasshopper is very powerful, has been used for over 11 years with Rhino. It has a very rich ecosystem of components and add-ons and extensions and stuff that you can use. And we're basically bringing it into the Revit environment and giving you all the tools that you want to use. So we have like components for walls, for curtain walls, for materials. If you want to play with the material components, all sorts of filters that you can create using the Revit API elements, playing with the documents like design options and everything else, adding direct shapes. It's becoming a really good project to work with Revit. So you have this option as well. And that's also an open source project. The only thing that you need is a license of Rhino, but you get Rhino Inside Revit for free.
Okay. Thank you very much. I have a question for comparison Dynamo and Rhino Inside Revit. For now, there's anything that you can do in Rhino Inside, but in Dynamo. So Dynamo's advantage for because I use Rhino Inside and I quite love that tool. And many people, Dynamo user, asked me like what the the limitation of Rhino inside. They know there's a lot of advantage in geometrical calculations, but any advantage in Dynamo to
be honest with you, and I'm not trying to like be against Dynamo or anything like that. Dynamo is a really powerful tool, but Rhino inside Revit doesn't really have anything that Dynamo doesn't have, right?
Oh, okay.
And there are a couple of things that you find that, well, I guess I said it wrong. The Rhino inside Revit, well, Dynamo doesn't have anything that Rhino inside Revit doesn't have, right? Rhino inside Revit covers almost everything that Dynamo does and more, because you get all the extensions and add-ons and all that kind of stuff. Like, for example, we just published the materials components. You don't have a really rich, powerful set of material components in Dynamo.
Right.
There's also this other challenge that a lot of these stuff comes as extensions in Dynamo. So in order to get your definition to work, you have to install a lot of different extensions. In Grasshopper, there's an automated built-in system to install the extra extensions, and anything that's Revit related, you get that as part of the Rhino inside Revit by default.
I understand. Thank you very much. That is my impression as well. I use Dynamo as well in Grasshopper. So I feel like Rhino inside had a more a better node, I would say. There's a lot of like a better way of interactive the type node if you put inside and automatically gathering all the filters element and that stuff I really loved. So yeah, thank you very much for that explanation.
Yeah, we're making it in a way that exactly it's really great for experimentation. Like, for example, this inspect element node, I can just drop it here and pass an element into this, like this wall that we just created, right? And then I can shift click on this component and get all the properties that I can read from it, right? So you can really look into the Revit API and see what is even available to you to be able to work with.
Yeah, I feel like UI is much better than Dynamo. I don't say like Dynamo is a bad tool. I wouldn't say, just the way you implement this Revit API is quite modern, I would say. There's a lot of like a better interaction user interface. So yeah, that is my impression. Thank you very much.
And we also, with Rhino inside Revit, you get access to Rhino and Rhino's geometry engine, and then Rhino supports over 40-something file formats. So whatever geometry that you get out of Revit, you can write it to any other format that you want to, which is quite awesome.
Thank you very much. 他には誰か質問ございますでしょうか？
あります。
はい。どうぞ。
先にどうぞ。
どうぞどうぞ。
じゃあ一個質問させていただきたいと思います。So I have a question regarding the Rhino Inside again. Together with the pyRevit, is it possible to use the Python syntax together with the Rhino Inside for?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So Rhino Inside Grasshopper has always had scripted components. So in this case, I'm going to grab the Python component or a C# or VB. You can just throw a Python component in here. But if you go onto the wiki under guides and scroll down, or like actually go to the home page and scroll down, I have guides for Python and C# right there. So you can click on Python and there's explanation of how exactly this works. And it also gives you a template Python component that is ready for Revit. So like this one, if I throw it in here, it'll give me that Python component. And it already has like all the imports that I need for Revit API and everything else from Rhino inside, and a couple of helpful and a template transaction and stuff like that. So you can use this to do whatever you want to basically with it. You can customize this and you can run and you can use Revit API with Python exactly the way you want it to. So the knowledge that you gain working with Revit API using Python is usable in Rhino inside Revit, pyRevit, and Dynamo Python components at the same time.
Oh, I see. Sounds great. Sounds good. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Of course.
I have a question. So regarding the Rhino inside Revit, if we worked as a team, so if you have 4 or 5 people in the team, does each user need to have Rhino license? You can't distribute the.
So Rhino has a couple of different licensing methods. One of the things that is very popular is the Cloud Zoo. So let's say you have 30 people at the office, not all of them use Rhino at the same time, right? So you get, I don't know, maybe like 10 licenses or something like that for the company. When you launch Revit, as long as you don't click on this Rhino add-on button to launch Rhino, you don't use a Rhino license. So if you're working with Revit, but you're not using Rhino inside Revit, you're not taking any licenses, right? The moment you clicked on this and it opened this Rhinoceros tab and sort of like activated all of this, then at that session, you're using a license. But if you close Revit and open it again, that license is free.
Okay.
So you don't really, not every user really needs a license.
Okay.
Kind of a cloud situation, right?
Yeah.
So you kind of have to figure out how many people generally use Rhino at the same time, and then you get that many number of licenses, but you can install Rhino on everybody's machine.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Of course. And we couldn't that's a technical, sort of like it's very hard to, once you loaded an add-on inside Revit, you can't really unload it. And that's the main reason that when you close Rhino, like we would love it to be able to lose and release the license, but it's a technical challenge because it's already loaded in Revit. There's no easy way to do this.
Yeah, I see. I asked the question because if you create a definition that's like a quality checking definition, then like every person needs to, because for example, if you have multiple projects to quality check, then maybe it's better to use pyRevit.
Yeah, you have multiple different options. Now that we're talking about that, in the next release of pyRevit, I'm releasing a tool that's called pyRevit Pre-Flight Check. So inside of your extension, you can define whatever number of checks that you want to be done using Python. So you're like, let's say you want to check if all the walls are the specific height, right? You can write a Python code that checks that, and you can throw it in a special place inside your extension, and the user can click on the pre-flight tool and see that test and run that and sort of like get the results and stuff.
Okay, great, thank you.
It's been worked on if you ever wanted to get into the code and whatnot. If you go into pyRevit source code, it's under this, sort of like if I go under issues, that would be, let's see if I can find the name of it. Oh, health check, pyRevit health check. So it's related to this issue. Somebody came up with this, and then there was like discussion happening here, and wanted to see like, if we can create a health check tool on the pyRevit. So that's what we're coming up with. It's going to be published in the next release. Okay,
thank you.
Of course.
Thank you. I have one more question. I have a question more. For Dynamo, we have a Dynamo player that we can put input, and we can put input by panel. And we have a Rhino inside and player. Do you have any plan to do similar stuff with Dynamo player that we can select slider and check as an input and
so Grasshopper already has a mechanism like this. I think if you like, I don't know, like this one, if I right click and say push to remote panel.
Oh, okay.
So you could use, if I can get it right, it's been a long time since I used it last. But there's a remote panel. Oh, this remote control panel.
Yes.
So if you don't want to see this, when you click on the tool, this runs, and you get to play with the slider value right there.
Okay.
Right? So any of the input components that you have, you can push into this remote panel, and when the tool is run, you can use this. Or there's an extension for pyRevit called Human UI, this one, that you can actually create windows using Grasshopper definitions. One of the examples is if you go under the Rhino inside Revit, Discover, and take a look at the creating user input using Human UI. So like somebody creates a window like this that you put information in, and when you hit update, it updates stuff. So you can actually create windows using Grasshopper.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I saw this example, and it's quite powerful. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. It's just that, it kind of needs a Human UI extension for pyRevit, but for Grasshopper. But it's a very popular popular Grasshopper add-on.
Yeah, just in Japan, there's not many how to say grasshopper use advanced grass not advanced, but many beginner grasshopper user, but they don't really like to put in plugin somehow. So I show that example to show we can have also UI in Rhino inside, but they asked me like the Dynamo player, they don't have to import any library, so they just asked me like the future development we have this them or not. So
I mean, you kind of have to pick and choose the right tool for the right job. That's the main challenge. Like I showed you running inside Revit, there's Dynamo, there's pyRevit, there's your own C# add-ons. You kind of have to pick and choose which one you want.
Right. Thank you very much.
Of course.
Okay, new question coming from chat. And how do you connect Python script and Xaml form control created by Visual Studio?
How to load the Xaml inside Python?
Yeah.
So I guess in pyRevit you can, let me actually go back here and show you. Let's go back to the pyRevit so I can show, oops, so many things popping up. So this XAML file is basically a text file, right? Inside the script, you create a subclass of the WPF window. Now, this is sort of like a wrapper that I have created in pyRevit. But if you look at the pyRevit code, the forms module, you can actually see how it's loading that XAML file inside that window, right? So basically, you create a class in Python, and it would ask the IronPython WPF module to load that XAML file into that type, right? The only requirement is that that type needs to be a subclass of the WPF window. And this is a mechanism that IronPython provides. It just loads all that content inside that window for you automatically. It's actually quite simple to load it that way. The rest of the stuff that you see here is like event handlers and all the stuff like the actions for the buttons and all that kind of stuff that's related to the window. Loading the XAML is super, super easy.
Thank you.
Thank you. Also, I have one more question, and I saw tweet about BIM 360 using pyRevit. When it runs the BIM 360.
So the BIM 360 has this section that's called the Design API that you can install. You can ask the BIM 360 to install a Revit add-on for you on the cloud, and it would run it for you. I personally haven't tested pyRevit, but I'm pretty sure it should normally run. There are a couple of other pyRevit features that are also pretty powerful that sort of like touches on that. There is one that I've added that's in development. It's called the pyRevit Roots API. If you are familiar with web development, you can create something like this. For example, you can create a function like this in pyRevit and use the root API to put it behind a web endpoint. And then as long as the window, the Revit is open and that document is open, you can actually call Revit from somewhere else and get that information out of, right? So you can kind of create your own Revit in cloud situation. That's one way. Or there is this other tool in pyRevit CLI. Now, we didn't get to talk about that, but pyRevit has this command line tool that once you install pyRevit, it's available to you. You can just open your sort of like prompt or PowerShell in this case I'm using, and you can type pyRevit, and that would be the pyRevit command line tool. And pyRevit command line has this feature that's called run. You can run a Python script over any number of models that you have automatically, right? And all of that is documented inside the documentation. If you go to pyRevit CLI and batch processing Revit models. And it tells you exactly how this works. You create a Python script and you point a bunch of Revit models at this command and give it this script, and it would launch it automatically. It looks at the file and knows which Revit version of Revit it is. So it opens with that Revit version. It runs the script for you. So if you want to make changes, grab stuff from that model and dump it somewhere else. Like you could create a batch process, like check model kind of situation in here and run this continuously on your servers to do that kind of stuff. So you have a couple of options. I haven't tested Beam 360 specifically, but I think it kind of should work because it's like just like any other environment, I guess.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, these two tools are pretty powerful as well.
Yeah.
For any of you guys that use pyRevit in a larger team environment, pyRevit also has a telemetry system. This is documented inside the telemetry system that you can set up a database. And I'm planning a series of workshops for pyRevit in the next month or two. So it's going to be like 4 or 5 different sessions. One of them is going to be dedicated telemetry system that I'll show how to set up a database, MongoDB, PostgreSQL, something like that. And then you set up your pyRevit, all the pyRevit users, and as people are using Revit and the pyRevit tools, it all reports back to your database so you can see which tools show the most errors and see those messages and kind of like that kind of stuff and maintain the development environment that you have.
Oh, sounds great. Looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Okay. 他に誰かいらっしゃいますか？じゃあ質問タイムこのぐらいにして、今日のありがとうございましたっていう一言を、30秒ぐらいずつで一人一人言っていってもらおうかと思います。
なんかチャットに質問が入ってそうですけど。
OK。じゃあ、三枝さん、ぜひ、ちょっとコメントもしていただきながら質問していただく感じでも大丈夫ですか？いらっしゃいます？勝之さん。
はい。
Hello.
Hello. Thank you for your presentation.
Of course.
I'm very glad to hear a lot of information. And I'm very, I was very interested about your ability, a lot of knowledge and skills.
Thank you.
And my question is, you closed Line main window, but...
Oh, I saw that. That's your question in the chat, right? That you're asking that I closed Rhino's main window, but Grasshopper remained on the desktop. So if you're launching Rhino inside Revit, you can open and close Grasshopper, Rhino, and stuff like that with Revit in the background. Once you close Revit, then all of them will go away. I'll actually show you one more time here. If you want to see, I'm going to launch Revit with Grasshopper again. Well, basically, Grasshopper window and Rhino window become just like another tool to Revit, right? So they're not dependent on each other anymore. You can open only Grasshopper window, only Rhino window, or all three of them at the same time. It's quite helpful.
That means these Windows parents are Revit?
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Of course. And then it becomes kind of necessary at some point that you need more than one monitor if you're working Rhino inside of it, because like there's just too many windows flying around, right? So like this here, see if I click Rhino, I get the Rhino window, but the parent is still Revit, right? This is attached to Revit. And then I can click on Grasshopper and get the Grasshopper window. I can get the Rhino window if I want to, however I want to. There's multiple different ways that you could get to any of these windows. This is my virtual machine. It's not a really good thing, but you have full flexibility over like playing with these windows.
Oh, thank you for sharing your very skillful knowledge.
Of course. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. 他にいらっしゃいますか？ちょっと時間なので、何か一言ありがとうございましたと言いたい人からどんどん言っていただけると嬉しいんですけれども。では、